Let's say you've been saving money for years. Not investing it, not blowing it on vacations or new cars. Actually saving it. And now you're engaged and suddenly everyone around you, your family, your fiancé, wedding vendors, Instagram, is telling you that the right thing to do with that money is spend most of it on a single day. One day. Not a house. Not a business. Not financial security, a party. And the crazy part is that most people just go along with it. Because that's what you do. Because it's supposed to be the most important day of your life. Because you only do it once. Because you deserve it. Today we're going to do something the wedding industry absolutely does not want you to do. We're going to run the actual numbers on what a wedding costs, what you're really getting for that money, and whether any of it actually makes sense from a financial standpoint. Hit subscribe if you want to keep seeing the real math behind the decisions everyone tells you not to question. Let's get into it. Let's start with the numbers. What we're actually talking about here, because most people have no idea how much weddings actually cost until they are already in the middle of planning one and it's too late to turn back. The average wedding in the United States in 2024 cost just over $35,000. That's the average, which means half of all weddings cost more than that. In major cities, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, the average pushes past $50,000. Some venues in New York won't even return your call for under $100,000. Now think about that number for a second, $35,000. That's a significant down payment on a house. That's a fully funded emergency fund plus a year of maxed out Roth IRA contributions. That's the kind of money that, invested at a reasonable return, becomes $350,000 or more over 30 years. And most couples don't have $35,000 sitting around in cash. So what happens? They go into debt. A 2023 survey found that 45% of couples took on debt to pay for their wedding. The average wedding debt carried afterward was around $11,000. And that debt, on top of the regular financial stress of starting a life together, is one of the leading causes of conflict in early marriages. Let that sink in. People are going into debt for a party, and that debt is damaging the marriage that the party was supposed to celebrate. So where the money actually goes? Let's break down where that $35,000 actually goes, because when you see it itemized, it gets even harder to justify. The venue alone typically runs $10,000 to $15,000. That's for the room. Just the space. Not the food, not the drinks, not the decorations. Just the permission to have your event in a specific building for a few hours. Catering adds another $8,000 to $12,000 for an average guest list. Photography runs $3,000 to $5,000 for a good photographer. Videography another $2,000 to $4,000. Flowers and decor another $2,000 to $5,000. The dress is $1,500 to $3,000 on average, and that's before alterations, accessories, and the veil. The band or DJ another $2,000 to $4,000. Then there's the cake, the invitations, the hair and makeup, the rehearsal dinner, the favors, the transportation. Every single one of these categories has an entire industry behind it, specifically designed to make you feel like the cheaper option is not good enough for your special day. The florist isn't just selling you flowers. They're selling you the idea that your wedding will be less meaningful if the centerpieces aren't perfect. The photographer isn't just offering a service. They're telling you that you'll regret not capturing every moment professionally for the rest of your life. It's genius marketing, honestly. They found the one purchase where people are most emotionally vulnerable and least likely to comparison shop, and they've built an entire economy around it. And the worst part is the upsell never stops. Every vendor has a basic package and a premium package. And the premium package is always presented as what most couples choose. Because nobody wants to feel like they're giving their marriage a budget send-off. Next is the psychological trap. Here's where it gets really interesting. Why do people spend this much? Because logically, rationally, if you sat someone down before they got engaged and asked them, would you spend $35,000 on a one-day party? Most of them would say absolutely not. That's insane. But something changes when it's your wedding. First, there's social pressure. Weddings are public events. Everyone you know is going to be there. Your parents, your friends, your coworkers, people you haven't seen in years. And there's this deeply ingrained cultural belief that the quality of your wedding reflects how much you value your relationship. A small, simple wedding gets read as not really caring. A big, beautiful wedding signals that this is real, this is serious, this is worth celebrating properly. That pressure is real and it comes from everywhere. Family members who have opinions. Friends who got married before you had set an expectation. Social media where everyone only posts the most spectacular wedding content, making you feel like yours needs to compete. Then there's the sunk cost psychology that kicks in once planning starts. You book the venue. Now you need the catering to match the venue. You pick the catering. Now the flowers need to match the vibe. Each decision locks in the next one and the budget keeps creeping up. And at some point, you're so deep in that, cutting back feels like ruining everything you've already built. And then there's what I call the once-in-a-lifetime justification. You only do this once, so you might as well do it right. Which sounds reasonable until you realize that logic could justify almost any financial decision. You only turn 40 once. You only buy your first house once. You only have your first child once. At some point you have to ask, is once in a lifetime a reason to spend money? Or is it just an emotion that the wedding industry has learned to weaponize? Let's see what you're actually paying for. Let's be really honest about what a wedding is. At its core, it's a ceremony where two people make a commitment to each other in front of the people they love. Well, that's it. That's the actual thing. Everything else, the venue, the flowers, the five-course dinner, the photo booth, the custom monogrammed napkins, none of that is the wedding. That's the production around the wedding. And the production has gotten so big and so expensive that it has completely swallowed the actual event. Studies on wedding spending and marital outcomes are pretty consistent on this. Couples who spend more on their wedding do not have happier marriages. If anything, the data points the other direction. A widely cited Emory University study found that couples who spent over $20,000 on their wedding were significantly more likely to divorce than couples who spent between $5,000 and $10,000. Couples who spent under $1,000 had some of the lowest divorce rates in the study. Now, correlation isn't causation. People who spend less might just be more financially responsible in general, and financial responsibility is one of the strongest predictors of a stable marriage. But at minimum, the data suggests that spending more does not buy you a better marriage. The dream that a perfect wedding sets the tone for a perfect life together, there's no evidence for that anywhere. What the research does consistently show is that financial stress is one of the top causes of divorce. And starting a marriage $11,000 in debt for a party is a completely optional form of financial stress that you chose to take on. Let's talk about the opportunity cost. This is the part that really should be talked about more. Let's run the actual numbers on what that wedding money could do instead. Say you spend $35,000 on a wedding. That money is gone the next morning. You have memories, photos, and a marriage that you could have had regardless of how much you spent on the party. Now let's say instead you had a simple wedding. Nice, meaningful, enjoyable, but capped at $10,000. You take the other $25,000 and you invest it. At a conservative 8% annual return, that $25,000 becomes roughly $55,000 in 10 years. In 20 years, it's over $116,000. In 30 years, it's nearly $252,000. $250,000 that exists in your retirement account because you chose not to spend it on centerpieces and a photo booth. Or you use it as a down payment on a house, which builds equity and appreciates over time instead of evaporating the morning after. Or you use part of it to pay off existing debt, which saves you thousands in interest and reduces the financial stress that damages marriages. Every dollar you spend on a wedding is a dollar that isn't building your actual future together. And that trade-off almost never gets discussed because the entire wedding industry's business model depends on you not thinking about it. Next, let's look into the industry machine. The wedding industry in the United States generates over $60 billion a year. 60 billion. It is an enormous, sophisticated, emotionally manipulative machine. And it has spent decades building a cultural narrative that you have completely absorbed without realizing it. The idea that a wedding should be the biggest, most expensive, most elaborate day of your life. The idea that cutting corners on your wedding means you don't value your partner. The idea that you deserve the fairy tale and anyone telling you to be practical is just being negative. That narrative wasn't organic. It didn't come from couples genuinely deciding this is what matters to them. It was constructed by an industry that profits every time a couple ignores their budget and upgrades to the premium package. The engagement ring is maybe the clearest example. The idea that a ring should cost 2 to 3 months' salary. That came directly from a De Beers advertising campaign in the 1940s. They made it up. They ran ads, they seeded it into the culture, and somehow it became a social rule that people follow without knowing where it came from or why. The same thing has happened with weddings broadly. The expectation of what a wedding should look like and cost has been manufactured and inflated by an industry that makes more money the more you spend. And most people just go along with it because they don't want to feel cheap on the most important day of their lives. So is it worth spending your life savings on a wedding? Here's the honest answer. If you genuinely have the money, not on credit, not by wiping out savings you'll need, just extra money that won't affect your financial future, and a big wedding is truly important to both of you, then spend it. It's your money. Nobody else's call. But if you're stretching, if you're going into debt, if you're draining savings that took you years to build, if you're starting your marriage in a financial hole, then no. It is not worth it. Not even close. Because the wedding is one day. The marriage is the rest of your life. And the financial decisions you make at the start of that marriage echo for years. Starting with debt and no savings doesn't just create stress. It creates the specific kind of ongoing financial pressure that quietly destroys relationships from the inside. You can have a wedding that is meaningful, memorable, and genuinely beautiful for $8,000 or $10,000. You can get married at a courthouse and throw a backyard party, and it can be the best day of your life. The memories don't come from the price tag. They come from the people's, the moment, and the commitment you're making. Nobody looks back at their wedding and thinks, I wish the centerpieces had been more expensive. They think about how they felt. Who was there? What it meant. The wedding industry wants you to believe that feeling requires $35,000. It doesn't. And the sooner you stop letting them tell you what your marriage is worth, the better your actual marriage is going to be. Drop a like if this made you think differently. Subscribe if you want to keep seeing the real math behind the decisions everyone tells you not to question.